So far in this chapter, we have been looking at something called image trace. Now, it used to be called, actually years ago when it was introduced, live trace. And it was introduced with another tool called live paint. Now, back then, live paint and live trace worked hand in glove. They worked together. As the system evolved, they became more separate. The name was changed to image trace, I think partially just to make sure we know it's a separate tool. And live paint is still live paint. But what does it do? Live paint will take any object. It doesn't have to be live trace. It's just an object. And to prove that, I've got a document open called livepaint101.ai. It's in your working folder if you want to follow along. These shapes were drawn with just plain old Adobe Illustrator drawing tools. I've got a circle. I've got two squares balancing precariously on a rectangle down here, and they are separate shapes. I've got this hodgepodge over here of a bunch of shapes. Let me go ahead and put those back together with undo. And then I've got two ovals down here. Let's start with the circle. Now, before we do anything to it, go over to your eraser tool and go into your knife. Now, the knife tool requires the shape is selected. I do have it selected. What I'm going to do is just kind of drag through it. We used this tool earlier. And come down like that. Now it's 4 pieces. Now let's talk about live paint. The tool itself is hidden under this tool right here, which is your shape builder. Let me go ahead and tear that off so we can see it. And while we're here, let's bring over our swatches since we're going to be using them. The live paint tool is a painting tool. It allows me to paint what are called live groups. Now the cool thing about that is it makes it a lot easier to paint something than using, say, a selection tool, selecting something, making sure you have the fill color selected over here, and then choosing a different color over here. It works much faster, but it actually does more than that, as you're going to see. Now, this is not a live paint group yet. So we want to select this tool right here, the live paint bucket. It's right in the middle. And if we come over here, if you can read that, it says click to make a live paint group. So go ahead and click. We did have it selected, incidentally. Okay, we now have 4 areas, and you can see it's showing us what it's going to do. The area enclosed by that red will be changed to the color that you see above the paint bucket tool, that blue. Now, if I don't want that color, obviously I can come down here to choose a different one, but watch what happens. We now get 3 colors. The one in the middle, the big box, is the active painting color. The one on the left and the one on the right actually represent the colors to the left or right in your swatches panel. Now watch this. If I use my left and right arrow keys, I can change the color in the swatches panel, and it will change the color for the paint bucket. I don't have to come down here and select a color. I can use my left and right arrow keys. That's pretty neat. I can also, if I want to, use the up and down arrow keys. Now you might think logically that it would take you down to the next row. Let me do something here. Pull that up and pull this down just a little. But actually it will take you to the next group. So left and right cycles you through the colors in a group. If you press the down arrow key, it takes you to the next group. But that way you never really have to worry if you've got a group selected for colors. Just use your left and right arrow keys. So let's come back up here and let's go in here and just click. Now I want to change the color. Use the left or right arrow keys. Do that again. Looks like a beach ball, doesn't it? And let's go ahead and choose one more color. Maybe a really deep red like that. So we've got these 4 colors. Let's say for the sake of argument, because these are slightly different, or maybe we want this color down here, but we forgot what color it was. Do this. Come into the color that you want to use. Hold on the Alt key, that's the Option key in a Mac, Alt in Windows, and go ahead and click in there, and basically it will reset to that color. You come down here and click, it'll fill it. Now watch the active area too. You will notice we have the colors at the top, we have the paint bucket at the bottom, and we have an arrow in the middle. The arrow in the middle is the hotspot for the tool. If you press down your cap lock key, you can go into precise mode, and then of course you're using that crosshair to make it happen. Turn off cap lock again, and it goes back into the tool. But most of the paint buckets that I've ever used, like in Photoshop, the hotspot is the drip of paint coming off of the tool. In this case, it's the arrow between those 2 icons. Remember that. No big deal, but remember that. So this one's done. We like it. Let's move on to these. Now these are 3 objects. In this area here, there's nothing there. So we can't fill that with a color. Now the first thing we should do is select them. I'm going to use my temporary selection tool. Let's hold down the Control key Command on a Mac, Control on Windows, and you get a temporary selection tool in a sense, and we can select it. Now we'll click to make a live paint group. Same idea. We get into these different areas, and we use the left and right arrow keys if you want to change the colors. But what about this area in here? Check this out. When you create a live paint group, any area in the group that's enclosed, even though there was nothing there to begin with, is part of the group. If we didn't have the live paint tool, we would have had to have put an object in that area in order to fill it. So that's kind of a neat feature of the tool. Let's come over here, use my Control key, Command on a Mac, and Control on Windows, and let's go ahead and select these guys. Now see how they all interconnect? Understand something. Each one of those areas is now separate. So if I come over here and begin painting, notice it fills that area based on the connection between all of them. This area over here, let me choose a different color, becomes a different area. This is a different area. This is a different area. This one over here, let me go ahead and select. You can see the area actually by simply seeing where that red is. And it creates all of these different areas. Now, we haven't converted these back out. These are still, all three of them, live paint groups. If I come over to my selection tool and select it, you can see the large anchors indicate it is still a live paint group. Now, if there's no reason to break it out of the group, it will still function normally when it prints. So, I mean, there's not really a big deal there. But if we do go up to the word object and go into live paint, we can say expand. Now, when we do, understand that was one big block before, but now it's pieces. Let me go ahead and ungroup that so you can see this. We come back over here again, see each one is a piece now. So not only did the live paint group allow me a very down and dirty way to colorize objects, it also interacts with those objects in a sense and cuts them into pieces. Now the same thing would be true down here. Let me go ahead and select these two and go ahead and go into Live Paint Bucket and click. The one other thing I want to show you down here just real quick is we're not stuck to solid colors, if you will. We can use gradients if we want. Doesn't matter what it is, even patterns. The Live Paint Bucket will allow you to very quickly, down and dirty, edit and fill areas with color with the click of a button. And don't forget the shortcuts, left and right arrow keys, holding the Alt key, Option on a Mac, Alt in Windows to change the color based on something already in the object. It's a fun tool to work with, obviously, but it's a very quick and efficient way to colorize objects in Adobe Illustrator.